If you
So-
want to
Smoke,
soak,
pray,
pray, Torah.
Okay. I don't know about you, but I'm still having a heck of a good time watching photos come in from the Webb telescope. And I've finally begun to understand what it means. It took me a while that we're looking at pictures that are 13.5 billion years old in terms of when they happened. And by the time the light, the image gets to us, it's that much time. And it's just, I feel like a kid again. I remember when Sputnik went up. You may not know that, you younger people. Sputnik is one of these round things that the Russians put up in the sky. And if I remember correctly, that was at the same time as the Woodstock event. Right, I think it was right at the same time. And so,
oh no, much earlier.
much
before that, I think.
Woodstock was 1969. Sputnik was in the 50s.
It
well,
was the moon landing that was close to.
told by someone-
Yes, the moon landing was right before Woodstock.
Okay, the moon landing. I knew they were doing something in space. And besides, I had teachers who told me that it was all a fake and the Russians weren't doing this, and there's no such thing as, these satellites. So in the meanwhile, here we are, and we have to integrate what is being shown with our theology, with our worldview, with our understanding of humanity. It is demanding a massive reworking of how we view ourselves. And the good news is that there seem to be many planets, exoplanets. See, I'm developing the language, exoplanets, and many of them could potentially sustain life. So I am immediately starting to build an air raid shelter, because once those people in those exoplanets find out we're here, I'm sure they're going to attack. So I am now moving into a new level of paranoia, and I love it, and I think that's really fine. Okay, so I see Marina from last night and today. Good to see you, Kevin. Too fun, yes. Good to see you, Dee Dee, Jim, Kathy, Helen. I mean, it's great to see and to be with everybody. Let's just start with calendar. Jim. Let's see, Jim here? Yes. No. Jim not here. Okay.
Yes,
So
Jim was here.
Jim was here, but I
Here he is.
He's on the screen,
Yeah,
Jim
just not visible.
he's
can
his
tell us
picture doesn't show.
movie world film series. Maybe not ready. Cindy.
Tomorrow is WRJ Area Day in the Valley, where it's going to be 99 degrees. And a certain rabbi's daughter will be presenting a workshop on ethical wills. And there are various other wonderful workshops. We had to postpone our Froman Shabbat dinner because it's indoors and we just want to be cautious at this time. We're going to have a happy hour in Century City at an outdoor event on August 9th. And we're planning a Sukkot celebration. And we're just going to kind of watch COVID to see when we can be in full force again.
Well, Cindy, actually, I'm really glad to hear that you're announcing there really is an area day on Sunday. All I know is Risa said she's leaving early and won't be back late, and I have no idea what
She's
that
telling the truth.
Okay, so it really is there. Okay, I feel better. I didn't want her like having an affair and okay. Jim.
Hi. There's no film discussion tonight. Next week, we're going to have an entertaining film called About Time. It's not a science fiction film, but it is about time travel and how we can use it to make sense of our lives and find out what's important to us. It stars Rachel McAdams and Bill Nighy. It's a British film made by the man who wrote Notting Hill, Four Weddings and a Funeral, and other British films you may have loved. It's a lot of fun, and hope to see you then. That's on the 23rd, a week from tonight.
Super. That sounds excellent. You've had a marvelous year, Jim, in terms of the Film Society. A marvelous year.
It's that's what I do all week. Is I have the miserable job of screening films all the time to try and find something that's meaningful, and it's getting harder and harder because I think I've mined the best so far. But there's new films being released all the time, so I'll do my best to keep them coming.
Where is it on? Which?
Streaming, Amazon Prime. I try and stick with Amazon and Netflix as much as I can, but we'll do some from Hulu Plus and HBO Max and perhaps Canopy if I can work that out.
Okay, fantastic. So thank you again, both Jim and Cindy. Things are still plugging along. August 6th, which is a Saturday evening, is Erev Tisha B'Av. The 7th is Tisha B'Av. I've downloaded an app to be able to enter the study that a group called Hadar, Hadar, is producing in New York City. Hadar is a superb national Jewish serious adult study enterprise, Hadar. And so on Tisha B'Av, I'm going to click in and watch some of their lectures and presentations, because even though I don't know exactly what they're going to be, I am absolutely sure that they're going to be excellent. So if you are looking for study activities on Tisha B'Av, I do recommend Hadar. I'm sure that Wilshire will have something Erev Tisha B'Av, but during the day, Hadar will have it. I would like to check in a little bit. And Eric, you don't have to say anything, but I do notice a bandage. Are you okay? Is everything okay? Oh, I can't hear you.
Yeah, okay. I had skin cancer. A lot of mole surgery on my head. So I'm healing slowly but surely. But thank you, because I love this. I used to love the sun. I used to go to Honolulu a couple of times, sit in the sun, but it caught up to me, my love of the sun. So so as a Florida resident part-time, I got to use my time very carefully in the sun. I'm a swimmer, so I like to do at least 200 to 300 meters a day at the pool in my backyard when I'm in Florida. So when I'm finished swimming, I got to go change the clothes and put a hat on and all that jazz to prevent more things. And also, I had a bad carcinoma on my face a couple of years ago, and it destroyed my auditory nerve during the chemo and the radiation. So I have to be very careful, and I lost some of my hearing. So I just have to wear the hearing aids when I'm online with you. And I thank you for your concern. I love you. I love you madly. I wish I bought a nice home in Menifee, California.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know what I wish? I wish for you the amount of money it would take to buy that home in California.
No, it was like Menifee in Sun City. But even Florida's, my place doubled in price when I bought it 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But at least I'm out of the cold weather for the winter time. God bless the auto train. I don't have to fly. Thank you.
By the way, I spoke with my dermatologist. I'm getting ready for a little cancer surgery on my head. And God willing, they'll remove the brain and give me a better one. But I said, what should I be doing now to increase protection?
Wear a hat.
The dermatologist smiled at me and said,
Cover up.
What you do is undo what you did 25 years ago. Okay, so enough on that. Checking in. I know that Tamara is not going to mention this, but she submitted this week her final edits on the book of Ezra to the Yale Press. And Tamara, if my memory serves right, which it rarely does, you've been working on this book for 30 years?
Oh, see, oh, there she is.
Yeah, 30 years. Okay, time to start a new project. Okay, that's great. And anyone else have something they want to share today?
Tell Risa if she can get here by about 3 o'clock in Phoenix. We're having a shoe painting party. So
The what?
a shoe painting party. She loves my shoes. So the artist is here in Scottsdale for a few days. So he's having a shoe painting party for Gabby and Sasha's dance classes.
Okay.
I am not going to comment. Shoe painting. Fine. Okay.
Oh,
Anyone-
I'm waiting. I'm just looking for a rental for a month or two in Los Angeles so I can change my pace from Florida. Okay? Because I like to cook my own food. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have anything else to share? Good news, difficult news, anything else? I want to share something only because it's eating at my heart. One of our really very, 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 very close friends, Rabbi Dov Marmer, in Jerusalem. Dov was rabbi for many years, senior rabbi for many years at Holy Blossom Temple in Toronto. He's a man who's one of the great rabbis of our generation, and he is in very, very, very difficult health right now. And Risa and I are, you know, in a sense, we're just waiting, unfortunately, but it's coming as a difficult blow. It's coming as a very difficult blow. One of the best things about our time together in Jerusalem with Dov and his wife, Fredja, is that half of the conversation would be an analysis of the world Jewish situation. And we would go from country to country and just, you know, just talk because his worldview is huge. And the other half was down and dirty gossip. And both elements were very, very, very precious to us. And we just pray for his comfort. Next, last week, we raised something about Miriam and the lack of Miriam. Sukasa, others have been worried about Miriam. And Sue, of course, every time she sees me now is, so what's about Miriam? Tell me about Miriam. What do we know about Miriam? Where did she disappear to? And so I contacted Tamara and I found this, and I'm going to quote, there is no proof and there is no real information about Miriam. Okay. We're dealing with, I'm quoting again, we're dealing with traditions that reach back over 3,000 years. And then a book written centuries later. There is no proof for the Exodus. There is surely no proof for Miriam. And I was doing this in quotes so that if you want to throw things, you won't throw things in my direction, okay? All we have are traditions about the past. And then Tamara recommends the Jewish Women's Archives, looking for material. Risa's online with the JWA practically every week. And they have a marvelous archives. And then I am not going to go into a conversation about the goddess in biblical and post-biblical Judaism. But last night, all I did was to say to somebody, well, you know, there really seems to be a strong indication that El, one of the God names for the God of the Jewish people, El, like El, but in its earliest usage, that El had a spouse, Mrs. El. And I'm just not going to go into that, okay? And because last night I got accosted, and that was enough. What do you mean our God had a wife? And that's obviously wrong. And what are you doing with Jewish tradition? And so I just figure I'll drop the subject right there. But folks, it's so worthwhile to keep on studying, because the God of El, the wife of El, and the Shekhinah, and the manifestations of the divine as feminine, are as old as humankind. They just are. And the fact that we have been steered away from that encounter certainly doesn't mean that the encounter didn't happen. Any questions? If not, we're going to be moving on, but any questions at all? Okay, Steve, you posted a note. I didn't read it because I can't read that quickly. What did it say?
It says that the lack of proof isn't proof that it didn't happen. In this context, I mean, there are certain times when if something isn't there, it is proof of that. This is not one of them. So the fact that we don't have proof is not the same as saying she and Moses didn't live, there was no Exodus or any of that.
Okay, yeah, and boy, this is a rare occurrence. You and Tamara are in agreement, and Tamara comes in with correct, but it means there's a limit to what we can really know. Period. We're never going to know some of this stuff. That said, the traditions have their value regardless. And this is where we go. And this is where we go. Okay. So what can you tell me? Our Sedra is Balak. What can you tell me about Balaam? What do you know about Balaam or Bilam, if it's going to be pronounced correctly? But I call him Balaam because I always have. What do we know about him? What do you know about him? What does that name bring to you, mean to you? Oh, come on. Come on, Steve.
As I recall, wasn't Balak a leader of a anti-Israeli group, and he sends Balaam to warn them and help him get rid of the Israelites or whatever they are called at this point, and that doesn't happen because of God's intervention.
Okay, so one thing is that Balak king and hires Balaam prophet and seer to come and curse the Israelites, because Balak king has heard that these people are moving through the desert, the wilderness, and they are militarily a factor to be dealt with. And Balaam multiple times attempts to curse the Israelites. And what is one of the things that Balaam said that we remember to this day? Who said that?
Herman
the Davener. Yes. Matovu ahalacha Yaakov mishkanotecha Yisrael, hagudla yartenza Jacob, you dwelling places of Israel. This is Balaam. This is one of the best known parts of our liturgy, written by a non-Jew as you know, a reverse expression to his attempt to curse the Israelites. And I am going to be so careful and frame this next statement so nicely. Sometimes talking to another person is like talking to, here I come, a donkey. I'm being very careful. And sometimes talking to a donkey is like talking to another person. And in this particular case, Balaam, among other things, meets a talking donkey. So when was the first time in the Torah that we find a talking animal?
Snake.
Snake, the serpent in the Garden of Eden. Very good. Okay, Eric, quick question.
Well, this is like the Mr. Ed. Remember Mr. Ed and
I remember
Francis,
Mr. Ed.
and Francis the Talking Mule with Donald O'Connor?
Yes.
And also there was in Midsummer's Night Dream, the donkey talked in Midsummer's Night Dream. Ain't that something?
Okay.
You know?
I am not going to be tempted to reframe the way I said. Sometimes talking to another person is like talking to a donkey.
I wish you would leave me out of this conversation, Rabbi.
Pardon?
I wish you would leave me out of this conversation.
Okay. Effie, you I'm fine. Okay. The Torah notes that Balak referred to Balaam this way: I know that whomever you bless is blessed, and whomever you curse is cursed. So Balaam is a very powerful religious figure. He says good things about the Israelites. He looks out at the camp of the Israelites and is moved to bless them. And so how does Balaam end up in Jewish history? How does Balaam, this pagan prophet seer, how does he end up? Any thoughts? Oh, okay. So I see Tufan right there. And you guys were at services last night, right?
Yes, we were there last night.
Yes, and you had in your hands what?
Baby Levy,
And baby was how old?
3 weeks.
3 weeks old. And I asked Tufan to throw the kid to me during services so I could hold him. And you said, no, you cannot hold Brando, and you did not let me. But I'm not holding that against you.
No, that's not true.
I mean, it could have been true that way, but I because I suggested that you actually throw him to me, and you refused. Okay. Okay, so Balaam ends up as a massive evil person in Jewish literature, in the rabbinic literature. One of the things that happens is that immediately following this encounter with Balaam and Balak, the people fall a whoring, as they say. They became involved with Balak and Balaam's people, and therefore committing crimes which were totally anathema to the Israelite standards. And the rabbis will forever blame Balaam, saying, you couldn't get the words out to curse us, so you did even worse. You sent your women in to pollute our people, destroy our ethical standards. And so he becomes a major negative figure. There's even a reference later on that Balaam, in fact, was a bad person. So starting out from this section, in which we look at Balaam as quite a cool character, talks to an animal, writes Jewish liturgy, he ends up then being an evil person. So the rabbis say, what went wrong with Balaam? What went wrong? And they have an answer, as they often do. Balaam suma bachat ve'enav haya. Balaam was blind in one eye. Why would they say that? And the answer is that even though he saw, he could not see clearly. Boy, could a rabbi write a great sermon about that. You're seeing something, but you're not seeing it clearly. So Balaam was, no depth perception, but beyond that, we could apply it to contemporary life and say, people can look at things and really see them, but not see them. not really understand what they are looking at. And it's a rather clever twist by the rabbis. So the rabbis say he was blind in one eye. Other rabbis will say they're really talking about almost like the Indian inner eye or the third eye, that Balaam saw but didn't see. And so there he was. He was able to believe that it was even possible for him, a pagan prophet, to effectively curse the Israelites. And he was wrong. Ray Kassaran.
Thank you. I don't want to give short shrift to the very important and interesting observation that you're sharing. But assuming you are in a good spot, I was having an interesting reaction to this text as well, sort of colored a little bit by our discussion of a few minutes ago about the multiple and persisting traditions supporting the feminine attributes of God. And I find it quite telling that the donkey is, at least in translation, a female donkey. And in contrast to the serpent, which at least in translation is a male pronoun serpent. And I think there are at least two reasons we are asked to understand that the donkey has authority. The first in verse 28, then Adonai opened the ass's mouth. So that certainly frames it as this is a active will of God causing the donkey to speak. But I do think it is interesting and perhaps significant that this wise donkey making reasonable observations is a wise female donkey.
Yeah, that's good. The only way we're not going to go back to that, but the only way I could answer a little bit, Ray, is that in Hebrew you have no choice. One is either this or that. There is no non-gendered way of talking. So the donkey is going to be either male or female. The snake is going to be either female or male. And we're kind of stuck with that. By the way, it's a real problem in contemporary Hebrew when people who are trying to be sensitive to gender-based issues find no language. When I hear what they're attempting to do to Hebrew, I have to admit it sounds plumb ugly, at least to me. And Hebrew really fights against a neutral thing. But I'm not going to go back to that. You are right in your comment. I want to throw one more thing out about what makes people blind. They said Balaam was blind in one eye. And I said, yeah, the rabbis meant he looked at things, but he didn't really see. Fine. But there's another way to go blind. What is another way to go blind?
I think that one way to go blind is that you're not learned enough to, if you're already blind, you can still learn, you can still study. If you become blind because you're not studying, you're not learning, you're not involved, then I think that's a way that you become blind or more blind, because you're just not
willful. That's a willful
right.
blindness.
Right.
Yes. A willful blindness. Let's put it into correct a situation. People who refuse to join us on Saturday morning. Merle, how would you describe them?
I would describe them as the same as those who refuse to go to temple or don't see any purpose to going to services, as people who just aren't interested.
I will say,
for whatever reason. I mean, the people have, people don't believe in organized religion. I guess this is organized religion, that we're all sitting here studying together in a group that was organized for us. But yeah. I think a big part of it is when I look at people, post bar mitzvah syndrome. Okay, you've been bar mitzvahed, you don't have to be there anymore. And so I think that's a piece, that's ignorance.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but it's ignorance.
Rebecca Sarin wants us to refer to these people as Slivovitz haters.
That okay, that works too. I don't think that fast. I mean, but I think that, you know, and I look at people that say, well, why are you so involved with the temple you grew up at? Well, sure. Why did you change synagogues here? Because you say you needed a better perspective, better place. You know, they ask all these questions, and all I can say is, I love my Judaism. You should try it.
Okay. And I don't
That's
want
about
to
as obnoxious as I could get.
I don't want to stop you, but I think that we would all agree that people who choose not to join our Chevra Torah are willfully blind. I think that we
Yes.
could probably get a good vote on that, but we can't tell them that because nowadays one never confronts anyone about anything. And I'm gonna say that before I'm gonna turn to Tamara, the blindness can also be produced by bribery. You can be bribed into blindness. Gold blinds. I mean, in a generic sense, gold blinds. And, you know, like if you make enough money out of a given project, then it becomes a worthy project, no matter what the consequences. Gold blinds. So we have willful blindness. We have the blindness of, quote, gold. And Tamara, I did not know this. So would you please explicate? I did not know this.
Oh, there is an inscription that's in Georgia now, in the little museum in Amman, that has a whole story about Balaam as a figure. And the inscription is from the 9th century BCE, which is 3,000 years ago. So they know a prophet named Balaam, and they have interesting stories about them that echoes the biblical story, but they don't mention Israel, of course. That's it.
No, I'm just sitting back absorbing. I did not know that.
I'll tell you a story. I didn't know it existed there, and we were there, a group of archaeologists, and it's, I mean, I was with archaeologists, I'm not one. And it's a little museum on a plateau outside of Amman that we just asked to go to. It wasn't on the tour. And you walk in there, and there are two guards, and they're outside smoking. And you just go in, and nobody is watching. And we opened this drawer, and there is a Balaam inscription. I couldn't read it, but one of my colleagues could, and said, oh my God, here is the Balaam inscription. They just, at that point, it was not on the wall, there were no signs, and so on. It's a great little museum, so if you go to Georgia and ask to go there, they have amazing treasures, and you can be very personal.
Yeah, I think that's great.
We had to fight not to steal anything, but we could have stolen, but we didn't.
Okay, Effie, this is the first good news you've had in weeks. Okay.
Oh, Rabbi. Sorry I was late.
Okay, very good. Herman?
If I may, I have a question going back to the text.
What text?
Yeah, right. Why would Balak go to Balaam, who is a believer in God, and ask Balaam to curse God's people?
My memory, and I'm not looking at the text right at the second, my memory is that they may not even have been of the same tribe. That Balaam is a regional expert, and he is known for his capacity to curse, to bless, and to gaze into the future. And
I understand and accept that, Rabbi, but my question is why, being that Balaam believes in God, acknowledges God, why would Balak ask him to curse God's people? Doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I think that's a fine question. I'm going to answer it this way. You know Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, right? And
I've heard of him, yes.
Yeah. And Jethro offers great advice to Moses and is, after all, the father of Moses' wife, and seems to acknowledge the power and the presence of the God Moses is following. But eventually Jethro goes back to his own people. And Jethro goes back, therefore, to his own God. And I don't think that things were as black and white as you might portray them. I think that in those days it was not at all unusual for people in certain circumstances to hold to one God or another God. It wasn't black and white either or. And so the fact that Balaam had a close relationship with the God of the Israelites does not mean that Balaam had no relationship with the local deities. And I can only leave it at there unless there's someone who wants to push harder on that. I don't think it was an extraordinary thing for Balak to turn to someone who has a variety of God commitments to do the work that Balak once done. But please, Herman, push back if you wish.
No, I accept. Thank you, Rabbi.
It's a great question, but I just don't think it's nowadays. It would be very weird for us, right? It would be very weird for us to go to a Catholic priest and ask the Catholic priest to intervene with God as we understand God.
Excuse me.
But in those days, I think that the boundaries were less firm. Okay, now, so we understand the Balaam and the seeing eye, that Balaam was viewed by the rabbis as having a deficiency of sight and a deficiency of insight. And by the way, that by the time they got finished with Balaam was one of the few who is forever denied a place in the Olam Haba. He is really considered to be a terrible person, a terrible person. Now, this is a description that the rabbis offer of Balaam. I've never heard of anyone like this. And I quote, "He lacked utterly in compassion and empathy, self-centered and selfish, no integrity and no honor, morally, spiritually, and therefore prophetically corrupt." I am avoiding current politics and I'm moving on from that, but that is how they do it. Let us turn to Numbers 22:5. Numbers 22:5, page 10. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Numbers 22:5. Numbers 22:5. And I am now on page 1050. 1050. It'll be around 945 in the women's commentary. 22:5. Okay. Balak sent messengers to Balaam. Again, not of the local, not a local guy. And he says, come and put a curse on them. The elders of Moab then come to Balaam, give him Balak's message, and Balaam says what? I'll reply to you as the eternal, and the word for eternal here is Adonai, however you want to translate that. I am going to tell you what Adonai says to me. Balaam is being like the talking donkey. The talking donkey was not thinking of words and speaking of them. God put the words in the donkey's mouth. In this scenario, God is putting the words into Balaam's mouth, and the rabbis say he did not understand them. Ramban especially says that Balaam was an empty vessel, rote repetition, had nothing of his own invested in the conversation. Sukasa, then Steve.
Okay. Could you please explain in verse 5, the quote, it says, there is a people that came out of Egypt. It hides the earth from view and it is settled next to me. I have no idea what that means.
Okay, I'm sorry, you are where?
I'm at Numbers 22:5, the second part of it. There's a quote there.
There is a people that came out of Egypt and hides the earth from view, and it's settled next to me. The hiding the earth from view means they're numerous. Okay? They cover the earth so you can't see it. They're numerous. That's easy. Okay? It hides the earth from view, and it is settled next to me. Balak is saying to Balaam, there is this humongous group of people coming out of Egypt, and they're sitting right next to me, to my people, and I want them cursed. So that's what Balak is saying. Okay? Oh, I got away with that. Steve.
When he says matovu, is that in a serious way, or could it be in a sinister kind of mocking way, saying, oh, you have this great place? Well, it's not going to last for long, so enjoy it while you can.
I have never read a commentary that offered cynicism. You know I love cynicism, but I have never read a commentary, it may exist, that thought of that as a possibility. There's a lot of conversation. The rabbis love the words of this man they hate. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov. Oh, wow. You have seen the secret of the Jewish people. It's ohalecha. It's your tents, your families, your dwelling places. The strength of the Jewish people is in family life and community life. So the rabbis say this is what Balaam meant. And why not? Okay, so they say that. Last night, Rabbi Nanas pointed to a reality that the quote, Matovu ohalecha Yaakov Yisrael Mishkantecha Yisrael, Balaam uses two words to refer to the Jewish people. Okay, it referred Yaakov and Yisrael. And last night, Rabbi Nanas properly said that very often in the modern world, the offspring of Yaakov are understood to be women, and the offspring of Yisrael is understood to be men. So that there is the base Yaakov. It's not called Beit Yaakov, it's base Yaakov. The base Yaakov education system, it's in Russia, it's in the Eastern Europe. elsewhere, is for women's education. Beis Yaakov is for women. When you see a Beis Yaakov school, that's a women's study center. Yisrael would be understood to be men. So the rabbis thrill to the manner in which Balaam understood that family is the core of Jewish life. Now, did Balaam understand it that way? Well, I mean, probably not. But this is how we parse and explain the words. So when we sing Matovu, we are singing it through our eyes, our lenses, namely our women, our men, our tents, our community. This is our glory, Ma Tovu. And it holds up pretty well. Pretty well. Okay, Donna.
Shabbat Shalom. Sorry for being late. I overslept. Family is everything. And I ask God why so far away my family. But when I come to Wilshire Boulevard Temple, I feel at home. Feel so much love. That's all I really want to say. You're so spot on, Rabbi. You inspire me, and thank you so much for everything.
Thank you. And it is family. I mean, but by the way, you have to know, you do know, this group more than anyone else knows, that the whole nature of the synagogue is under dramatic fire. And the nature of synagogue, I won't be here 20, 30 years from now, is going to be very different than it is today. I had an extended conversation with Rabbi Leader this past week. And one of the things we were talking about is that some synagogues with their current structure are going to survive, most will not. And the question is, what then? And the what then is what you need to be involved in, because this is happening around us. It's going on, whether you vote for it or not. It's happening.
We're being attacked. Our rights are being taken away.
No, it's the nature of the synagogue life itself.
Oh.
Synagogue life itself. Because what people want, ohalecha mishkanotecha. People want the tents, the community, the family. And unless synagogues are able to provide this, those synagogues will not survive. And the change isn't coming 100 years from now. It is underway right now, right now. Kevin.
Here, I apologize. I read ahead a little bit. Verse 20, it says, that night God came to Balaam and said to him, if the agents have come to invite you, you may go with them. But whatever I command you, that you shall do. So God is saying that Balaam can go with them, but then the next morning he sends an angel to, kill him, or, I don't understand that. Can you explain that little part where, he's told to go and then, confronted not to?
The night before, God says, okay, go, but say only what I'm going to tell you to say. And the next morning, Balaam is riding his faithful donkey, and the angel blocks him. And no, you can't go. Kevin, who sees the angel first?
The ass.
The donkey.
Yes. Part of the answer to your question is in that fact. How did God the night before come to give Balaam permission to go? Why? Because Balaam keeps asking, you raise children. And after a while, the kid, you give an answer. Daddy, I want. No, we're not going to do this for this reason. 10 minutes later, Daddy, I want to go. No, this is the reason. The third or fourth or fifth time you get the request, you may yield, but then you provide a cocoon for the experience. You limit it because you have concerns. I don't know about you. I have experienced that as a father. And I have admittedly yielded after the fifth or sixth entreaty. All right, but limit, limit, limit. The next morning, Balaam is on his way. To be fair, Effie, I hope isn't listening. I don't think the donkey talked. Who was talking? Balaam was talking to himself and struggling with himself over what's going on. He knows that his going does not reflect God's will. And he's torn between the two. That's how I read the text. That God doesn't change God's mind. The struggle is an internal struggle within Balaam, who believes in God. I think, to be nice to Balaam, he believes in all the gold he is going to get. He is really attracted to doing what Balak says, and he knows that God doesn't want it. And what's going on there at that path when the angel with the sword blocking the way is Balaam struggling. Kevin, that's how I read it. Push back. I mean, does that work for you? Not?
Yeah, it does work.
You're saying a little
But-
reluctantly.
Well,
I hear
it's-
you. You're not
yeah.
enthusiastic about my response. Please push ahead. What do you feel?
No, it actually does describe that a little bit more, but it just means that, there's, the donkey wasn't the one that stopped. It was Balaam stopped the donkey himself. And it just changes the words to not literally meaning the words.
And I'm comfortable that it's not much of an offense to the traditional reader of text to not look to talking donkeys, though there are rabbis who teach, I'm remembering, that one of the things created before the beginning of creation was the talking donkey. So that God knew all along. Oh God, I'm trying so hard to be good. I want to say that sometimes an ass will represent God's voice, but I don't want to say that. So a talking donkey.
But what does this mean about talking fire?
I'm sorry?
What does it mean about talking fire?
Fire that you're talking about. Kevin, you're really pushing hard today. You're talking about God speaking to Moses out of the burning bush.
Yes. I mean, if you, I mean, it's
Kevin,
literal
that's
or
literally true, man. Come on. It's the donkey who can't talk. Fire can talk.
okay.
No, it really isn't different. It really isn't different. It's a literary device which I find beautiful with regard to the burning bush, a literary device which talks about Moses fled Egypt, abandoned his people, living a good life, married well, flocks, the business. And part of Moses is saying, this isn't what you were born for, man. You got to go back. And that's portrayed as a voice speaking out of a bush. That is how I would read it. I would not read it as Moses factually encountering the voice of God from a burning bush. He looks maybe in the desert as we can do at a fire, look at the fire and be pushed into deep thought. And Moses is deep thought. I can't go on like this. This is empty. And actually, just between the two of us, I really believe that. That's what I believe happened in the story of the burning bush. That you can't go on this way. You have a responsibility, and it's larger than caring for your sheep. Unfortunately, I chattered on, and we are at the end of today. Ray, can you do it in 1 second?
Wait, I was up before Ray.
Okay, Effie, can you do it in 1 second?
Yes. Balak and Balaam. In Hebrew and in English, the first two letters are the same. Is there anything to be read into that?
I am not capable of answering that. Okay, Bilam, Balak begin with the same first letter. No.
Two letters.
No, Effie, I would just say kacha. That's the way it is. Ray?
Thank you. I have to add one sentence to my 1 second, which is just how much I loved your reading of The Burning Bush. I don't think I recall you saying it before. It feels psychologically true and resonant and enduring, and I'm grateful for your sharing that with us. What I did want to...
Oh, you couldn't let it go at that, right? You couldn't stop?
Well, now I'm just going to our current text, so I'm not going to qualify it. I stand by that. But I am fascinated, and this is a thorny question, which we only have time for the question. But my question is, when we look, and I'm looking now at verse 22, but God was incensed at his going, so an angel of Adonai placed himself in his way as an adversary. I realize that in this text, I don't believe we have further explication of what we are even supposed to imagine when the text uses the word angel. Does this being present as a man? Does it present in any way outwardly that would signal to Balaam that there is something special, unique, or ordinary, or to the donkey about this apparition or ordinary looking man? The text does not seem to tell us what we are even to imagine, but we are colored with that word angel that imparts privilege to this encounter without explaining why there is privilege to this encounter or why Balaam would understand any difference between that and encountering a guy on the road. And I don't know what to do with that.
Okay, come back next year. I mean, I would love to go into it. The one thing that flashed in my head was when the three, whoever, met Abraham and came to his tent. How did Abraham read them as angels? And what is presented when they saw them?
Also that, yes.
It's the same question. It's the same question.
No, didn't Abraham not recognize them as angels? He was treating them the way he would treat any other stranger.
But yes, and then it's revealed angels. Yeah, I can't answer that question briefly. I value the question. Would you please put a note in your notes and hit me with it early next year at this Sedra, God willing?
Sounds good.
It's a real question. It is not to be set aside. It is not to be set aside. I need to be able to move now to Kaddish, your site, and to say this was a great day. I totally enjoyed it. Thank you for today. Those who have passed away during the past month: Steve Alexander, Michael Camrus, Sidney Joseph Moskowitz, Eugene Pantuk, Marcy Seagull, Walter Shemist, Rita Weiss, Lee Zlotnick, Yortzites that occurred during this past week: Lita Alcove, Sophia Ellenberg, Muriel Bartmasser, Jim Bayer, Tilly Becker, Judah Berosowski, Rose Stern, Barrowfine, Hillel Baton, Beatrice Fabric Broder, Eleanor Castleman, Bernard Cezanne, Jerry Shisvin, Joyce Mullery Clark, Miriam Cohn, Beatrice Cord, Charlotte DeRoven, Robert Deschel, Herman Ehrlich, Bill Feinstein, Harry Feinstein, Samuel Firks, Lee Formelant, Melba Rosalind Franklin, Marilyn Curry Fricks, Marcia Gardner, Judy Gelfand, Marilyn Garad, Millicent Heyman, Carol Harris, Aaron Harris, Irving Heitner, Lita Hilliard, Alan Hirschfield, Michael Jaffe, Jules Josko, Joshua Kaplan, Sheila Josephsberg, Kasten, Edward Lee Cosberg, Bernard Kurtzman, Anna Rose Levitt, Bernard Seymour Levin, Erwin Liebman, Beatrice Linton, Eileen Littman, Helene Gettleson Lopez, Lyubov Mechevaskaya, Donald Isaac Magnan, Anna Smithline Magnan, Beverly Mandel, Jeanette Gary Markman, Diane Marks, Marvin Burton Mayer, Elliot Miller, Tom Mintz, Lisa Nesbitt, Paul Orloff, Lillian Palanker, Rose Mills Pepper, Theodore Peterman, Quincy Plattis, Harold Polikoff, Phyllis Prescott, Reva Raz, Meyer Allen Rice, Sidney Rosen, Miriam Sanders, Faye Savid, Robert Scott, Leon Sherman, Jean Zerodi, Samuel Simon, Rudolph Sims, Meyer Slifkin, Sophie Solitar, Griselle Stern, Maya Sverdlik, Harry Tischerman, Jerry Traeger, Jesse Ward, Paul Weingarten, Stanley Zimmerman, Arthur David Zuckerman. I apologize for those whose names I have misspoken. If I have eliminated or failed to read a name, I ask that you speak those names aloud now. Speak them in your hearts or speak them with your voice.
Cyril Hirsch.
We mention as well in our hearts all those who died in defense of the United States, died in defense of the state of Israel, died in the horrors of war and in the violence that afflicts our country, and those who have no one to say Kaddish for them. We bear them all in our hearts as we say Yitkadal, Yitkadal, Shemei Rabbah, Bialma Divra Chirute, Yamrit Malchute, B'chayechon Uvyomechon, U'v'chaye B'chol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, Uvizman Karim, B'imru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Barach, Le'olam Yomei Almayam. Yitzarach, V'yishtabach, Yitpa'ar, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shemei D'Kudishah, Le'elam Yikol Birchata V'shirata, Tush B'chata V'nechamata, Tamiran B'yalma V'imru Amen. V'hei Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chayim
Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael dimru amen.
Amen. Oseh Shalom V'Bromav. Hu Yaseh
Shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael dimru
Amen. May God, who makes peace in the high places, make peace in our hearts, make peace in our homes, make peace in the household of Israel, make peace among all the families and nations of earth, and let us say,
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you for today, everybody. Have a great weekend. Don't forget to come to the Santa Monica Pier Saturday and Sunday, where they have all All-Star Game activities going on Saturday and Sunday. And if you can afford a ticket to the All-Star Game on Tuesday, God bless you. And have a great week, everybody.
Thank you too, Rabbi.
Interested in
Shabbat
reading.
shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.
Okay.
Bye, Herman.
Hey, Effie, how are you?
Pretty good. And yourself?
Fantastically, wonderfully fine.
Good. How's B?
No changes.
No changes.
As you say when I say how surely.
Same. No changes.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Take care. Have a good week.